It's a Bill Anderson song, and I got onto this song and interested in it after I had a meeting with my insurance agent one day, and we got to talking. His father was a World War II veteran, and he had gotten up and driven he left in the evening, drove to Hannibal, Missouri, to pick up his father to take him to put him on a flight at 6 a.m. in St. Louis for an honor flight, which was going to take all the World War II veterans to see the World War II memorial, and they show them around, and he wanted to spend all day with his father, and then they flew back that evening, and he left St. Louis airport, took his father back home to Hannibal, and drove back home. By that point in time, he'd been up close to 2 days. And I asked him, I said, "Weren't you tired?" He said, "No." He says, "That was the greatest experience of my life, taking my dad on that honor flight." Now, my father was a Marine veteran of World War II, and this is where I get the stories about things that I really like the movie Hacksaw Ridge, because it was about Okinawa, and my father was on Hacksaw Ridge when all that fighting was going on. And he never really talked about it much. I just know that he was there. And when my father joined the Marines, he was actually underage, and he was a very young college student. Him and two of his buddies decided they were going to go down in the morning and join the Marine Corps for the war effort. And he didn't tell his mother he was doing this. And he joined up, and he showed up to the Marine Corps recruiter in the morning, and his two buddies weren't there. So after waiting around for about a half hour outside, the recruiter comes out and says, "Well, son, let's go ahead and process you, and we'll take care of your two buddies when they show up." By the way, he never saw those two friends again. But he ended up in the Marines, and he fought through the Pacific. And the thing about the difference in mother is his mother was concerned when he joined the Marines that she was more concerned about getting his body back to burying him after the war. And that was her concern. And anyway, I asked him one time, I said, "Well, if you were so underage, how did you get in?" He said, "Son," he said, "in that day and age, if you was old enough to lie about your age, they figured they should believe you." So that's how my father ended up in the Marines. Now, he went through several island invasions. He was a sniper for a while. And after the Japanese surrendered, he ended up in mainland China. The Marine Corps had units there that were a buffer between the communist troops and the nationalist troops. And that's what my father did. Now, through all this, my father earned a very healthy hate for officers. Okay, had no use for them at all. So he gets done with the Marines, and he goes back to school at Texas A&M. At Texas A&M, if you were part of the student body, it was an all-male school then, you were required to be part of ROTC. So my father figured he was safe. He would join the brand new Air Force ROTC. Figured with the service he'd already done in the Pacific with the Marines that he'd be good. So he graduated from A&M, and they commissioned him as a second lieutenant in the brand new United States Air Force. And then Korea started. And they called my dad and told him he needed a report, and he laughed and said he wasn't going to do it. He'd done his time. And then some idiot says, "That's okay, we'll just report you to your draft board." Now, this is a guy who's already done 4 years in combat, and they're threatening him with the draft board, right? Anyway, they finally convinced him that he needed to show up like he was supposed to, and they sent him to California to do research on radar for the Air Force. For that, he was activated. And how I came to know all this is I was born in Culver City, California. My family was all from Texas. And I asked my father one day, how is it that I came to be born in California? And that's when the story about my father being an officer in the Air Force came out. And by the way, I was about 40 years old before I learned that story. So kind of a funny thing. Now, the difference in time, in 1974, I joined the Army. I didn't tell my mother. And I got on a plane out of Salt Lake City, Utah, and I had to do a change of planes in Dallas-Fort Worth Airport. My mother lived by Dallas. I called my mother and I said, "Guess where I'm at?" My mother's like, "Where are you?" I said, "Well, I'm at Dallas, the airport here in Dallas-Fort Worth." She said, "What are you doing there?" I said, "I'm on my way to Fort Polk, Louisiana." You know, my mother called me everything but intelligent. She really didn't appreciate all that. But and my father laughed because my father was a Marine scout, 4th Recon, as they called it in Vietnam. And I joined the Army. I was an Army Scout, and my father had told me two things: scout the Marines, and don't join any combat arms. He said, I've got enough medals for all of us. So when I told him that I had enlisted as a cavalry scout, my father laughed. And so that's kind of how the thing about getting in the military went. So anyway, so I came across this song after talking to my insurance agent and my dad telling me about his trip, and I just absolutely love this song. I do this year round, not just on Veterans Day. He came home to Tennessee, a young man at the end of 45. Only one of 7 men in his platoon that made it back alive. He must have seen some tough times, but he never talked too much about all of that. Put his pictures down, his memories in a cedar chest. Everything was his old Army hat. By the time I graduated, the winds and chains had blown across our land. They were burning flags and draft cards when they bothered to take some kind of stand. And we used to laugh at Grandpa like he was some old relic from the past. 'Cause he never left the house whilst he was wearing that funny looking worn out Army hat. Every eye was on him anytime that he went anywhere. They whispered and they pointed, you could tell that Grandpa didn't care. I ain't wearing this for them, he said, it's a whole lot more than that. For my buddies who gave everything, the least that I can do is keep on wearing this old Army hat. He called me up one morning, said he'd seen on the news on his TV. They opened up a monument to World War II in Washington, D.C. I ain't getting any younger, and I wish someone would take me to see that. I couldn't help but think they're gonna laugh at you up there when you show up in that silly Army hat. Two strangers both saluted as Grandpa walked up to the monument. One said, thank you, soldier, for a job well done. The other said, amen. And a young boy said, sir, my daddy went to war and never made it back. Would you take a picture standing here beside me and maybe let me wear your Army hat? Every eye was on him, and there was not a dry one in the crowd. They whispered and they pointed, Grandpa stood up extra tall and proud. He said, son, just keep it. When the young boy tried his best to give it back. You're a brave little soldier, son. Every soldier needs his very own authentic Army hat. For your daddy who gave everything, the least that I can do is pass on this old worn out Army hat. Oh, beautiful, for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesties upon the fruited plains. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and find thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea.